Have you ever stopped to think about how much talent, history, and intelligence we ignore every day just because someone wears a different uniform than us? Well, that's right. This story begins with a common cleaning lady in a luxury building called for a fake interview, a trap. But when she began to speak calmly, truthfully, and in 7 different languages, the game changed, and it turned out beautifully. This video is not just about injustice. It's about silent overcoming, about the strength of someone who has never had a stage, but carries invisible leadership that silences even the most arrogant. You will see how the respect they deny out loud returns in silence, but weighs more than any applause. Stay with me until the end, because what you're going to hear here, it's not just inspiring, it's a mirror. And it may be that without realizing it, you are on the side of those who ignore or on the side of those who just need a chance to show who they really are. So, which side do you want to be on? Marta Lima, 38, was the kind of presence that blended into her surroundings. She worked as a cleaner at Vertis Capital, a giant in the investment sector, always impeccable, discreet, efficient, and invisible. In the mirrored hallways where executives in expensive suits walked, she walked with a bucket and a cloth in her hand, picking up the leftovers of a world that seemed made only for others. She was respectful, but ignored, present, but constantly silenced. Amidst her cleaning routines, Marta was also the target of silent humiliations. Arthur Brandone, the partner's son, made a point of treating her with contempt. Sometimes with ironic smiles, other times with childish behaviors like spilling coffee on the floor just to see her duck. It was the kind of corporate harassment disguised as a joke that no one has the courage to call by its name. But what no one imagined is that behind that silent woman there was a sharp mind, a silent strength, and a story that could not fit on a name tag. On a sweltering Tuesday, Marta found an envelope with her name handwritten in the locker room. It was an invitation to an internal promotion interview. Her heart raced. Cleaning ladies don't usually get called for this kind of opportunity. She read it over and over again, trying to figure out if it was real or just another camouflage trap. But she decided to go. Maybe it was a chance. Maybe just another humiliation. But either way, she knew it was time to stop being just the shadow that cleans and start showing herself. The interview, as Marta suspected, was nothing more than a cruel act. Upon entering room 34, she found 7 men in ties in leather chairs, arranged as if they were about to judge a defendant. In the center, a single chair, cold and lonely. It was the typical trap set to feed the ego of those who find it funny to test other people's limits. And even there, in the middle of the farce, she sat with the posture of someone who never needed to impose herself by shouting. She only needed to exist, truthfully. Arthur, the same one who mocked in the hallways, made a point of leading the scene. He used a polite tone but full of sarcasm. The question came as a provocation. If you were promoted today, what would you do first? Marta, with a slight sigh, answered clearly and strategically. She spoke of cancel unfair contracts, invest in the team, in ergonomics, time and security. No one expected such a firm answer. She didn't even look like a cleaning lady at that moment. It was as if she were revealing her invisible leadership that he always carried. With each new answer, the executives shifted uncomfortably. And when Marta revealed her past, 3 years of economics at UFBO, working in conflict zones, fluency in 7 languages, and living between Mozambique, Lebanon, and Jordan, the room was filled with an awkward silence. The planned humiliation was reversed in seconds. That woman, who they thought had nothing to lose, demonstrated emotional intelligence, strategic vision, and a background that dismantled any structural prejudice. They had set up a fake interview. But she, without knowing it, gave a real lesson. What was supposed to be an inside joke took unexpected proportions. An intern, thinking it would get laughs in the WhatsApp group, secretly recorded the whole thing. But when he watched the video again and heard Marta speak firmly, alternating between French, Arabic, and Mandarin, he was paralyzed. That recording, made with the intention of ridicule, became a mirror that reflected the invisibility that so many face. Unwittingly, he had captured a powerful truth. And truth, when it goes viral, cannot be contained. The video exploded on social media, not as a meme, but as a symbol. Outraged internet users, HR leaders, CEOs, and even ordinary people began sharing and commenting, "This woman is the Brazil that no one sees," read one post. Marta became the headline of corporate groups, leadership forums, and communities that discussed dignity, empathy, and professional development. It was the kind of social impact that does not come from marketing. It comes from truth. She, who was previously ignored, was now called the woman who silenced the suits. Proposals for national and international companies began to arrive. Invitations for interviews, leadership positions, lectures, and all this not because of a campaign, but because of the power of someone who didn't shout, just spoke intelligently and respect. A viralization didn't make Marta a celebrity, but it made her a turning point in a conversation that the market can no longer ignore. How many talents do we hide behind the uniforms that we insist on not seeing? The morning after the video, Marta arrived early, as usual. But something was different. The security guard who had barely noticed her before offered her coffee. The receptionist smiled at her from the corner of her mouth. And in the hallways, the looks no longer pretended she didn't exist. They were direct, curious, some even embarrassed. Organizational culture began to tremble. She, who for so long carried the invisibility as armor, now caused silence wherever he went. But it wasn't fear, it was respect. Arthur's father, the company's founder, reacted firmly. He called his son and, without raising his voice, removed him from his position for an indefinite period. Not because of the repercussions, but because corporate justice. "You acted like a brat," he said, and that sentence echoed like a watershed. Virtus Capital began to look inward, not with marketing, but with shame. The video did more than reveal an overlooked talent. It exposed the structural prejudice which the company tolerated in silence. Employees began to approach Marta with admiration and even asking for advice. Their female voice, which previously was not heard even when requesting more cleaning products, now inspired conversations about emotional intelligence, appreciation, and even equal opportunities. The company was still the same on paper, but in the eyes of those who lived there, it was beginning to change, transform. And all this because someone had the courage to be true, even within a lie. While the entire company was digesting the impact, Roberto Mendes, an experienced advisor and one of the few who had not mocked Marta, decided to take action. He approached her on the terrace without formalities and proposed something that, at first glance, seemed unlikely. She could take on a new strategic role, helping to map invisible talents within the company itself. It was not a promotion out of vanity, nor a reward for having gone viral. It was an invitation to silent reconstruction of a system that has always failed in really listen. Marta, with her feet on the ground and a sharp mind, immediately refused any position that came as a prize for embarrassing others. She said firmly that I didn't want to be a symbol or a trophy. She didn't seek the spotlight, but opportunity to contribute truthfully, and she would only accept any proposal that respected her journey and her essence. At this point, Marta was not just taking a stand, she was teaching the company, without giving a lecture, what it is dignity in the workplace. Little by little, she began to be called by a new name behind the scenes, the woman who listens. Without a new badge, without an official position, but with a clear role to bring voice to those who have never been heard, with empathy, without vanity. The invisible leadership, who was once silent in the hallways, was now sought out for guidance. And the most beautiful thing, Marta didn't change her essence. She continued to carry the same fabric bag, the same simple shoes, but now she walked with presence. And that no one could ignore. Marta began her new mission in the simplest way, by talking. not with the suited and booted people at the top, but with the forgotten people at the bottom. She visited the maintenance people, the night watchmen, the tired receptionists, the cooks with incredible stories buried deep in their throats. What she was doing wasn't training, it was active listening, and this listening, done with respect, silence, and pen in hand, began to generate something rare in corporate environments, transformation from the inside out. In these informal conversations, stories emerged from people who had been working for years without even being invited to a meeting. Stories of women who dreamed of studying, but lived stuck in a routine of 3 shifts and 2 buses. People who never asked for a promotion, they just wanted to be treated like human beings. Marta's presence brought out what the company pretended not to see, a system that normalized invisibility and called it structure. In a short time, Marta was already a reference, not because she had status, but because she generated trust. Young female employees felt inspired by her silent force, who didn't need a megaphone or a blazer. And it's funny how this works. When someone listens with truth, the other person finds the courage to speak from the heart. Marta became bridge, and when there is a safe bridge, even those who are afraid to cross it begin to take the first step. Time passed, and even the most resistant began to let their guard down. Arthur Brando, previously arrogant and mocking, ended up crossing paths with Marta in the elevator. For the first time, there was no mockery in his eyes, only embarrassment. He tried to say something, but she elegantly cut him off. Then don't say it, just do better from now on. It was short, direct, and sufficient. Sometimes silence educates more than any speech about corporate justice. Little by little, the environment was shaped by the new climate. No official announcement, no signs, no institutional campaign. What made the difference was the constant presence of someone who understood the most hidden layers of the company. Marta didn't knock on the leaders' doors with demands. She sat down with the forgotten ones and, from their floor, made truths reverberate that rose to the upper floors. The organizational culture, previously rigid and indifferent, began to learn, the hard way, the value of empathy and of their representativeness real. It wasn't about making Marta a manager. It was about recognizing that, within a rotten structure, the one who sees the most is the one who cleans underneath. And when that person starts speaking clearly, the rest can no longer pretend they didn't hear. The changes began slowly. More dialogue, more attention to detail, more care with words. Not because someone told them to, but because someone heard it first. And that changes everything. The company finally offered Marta an office. It wasn't big or modern, but it was hers. There, without any sophistication, she put a simple sign on the door. You can come in if you want to talk about the truth. There were no special titles or badges. There were only listening devices, notebooks with notes, and stories of lives that never made it into the board reports. Marta had found a space where she didn't have to prove herself. She just had to exist with true. She was still who she had always been. Simple pants, worn shoes, hair tied in a discreet bun. But her posture was different. Not of someone showing off, but of someone who now occupied a space with presence. And the most beautiful thing was seeing how people started to seek her out, not to flatter her, but to share. Marta had achieved what many leaders spend years trying to buy with an MBA, genuine respect. And no badge can give you that. Inside that discreet little room, she received security guards, waitresses, receptionists, and even some curious managers. They talked about routines, challenges, and small possible changes. Marta wrote everything down without rushing. The company was beginning to learn that real transformation does not come from millionaire consultancies, but from humanization of relationships. And it all started with a woman who just wanted to be treated like a person. And now, finally, she was. What began within the company soon went beyond its walls. Marta arrived home and found her sister holding a box full of letters. They had come from all over the country, from business people, retired teachers, anonymous workers. People who saw themselves in her, people who understood that dignity has no uniform. There were invitations, compliments, outbursts, and above all, recognition. Something that, for a long time, she learned to live without expecting. Each letter was a mirror. A man from the countryside offered her a position at his small export company. A teacher for the elderly asked permission to tell her story in a lecture. And there, Marta saw what the video had provoked. Social impact true that goes beyond the likes. Ordinary people, with silent stories like hers, feeling seen, many for the first time. That video, made without consent, had touched the open wounds of a country that has always hidden its greatest talents under the label of simplicity. But Marta, even though she was emotional, remained firm. She didn't want fame or to be on the cover of a magazine. She wanted to continue working freely, truthfully, without needing to go viral to be respected. What she was looking for was equality of space, not a pedestal. And if the world wanted to see her as a symbol, she made sure to remember, before being an example, she was just a woman trying to pay the bills, take care of her family, and be treated with the basics. Respect. In the end, Marta didn't become a celebrity. She didn't appear in motivational campaigns or speak in front of auditoriums with spotlights, but that was never the point. Her greatness wasn't in a video. It was in her between the lines of the routine, in the silences she always knew how to listen to, in the pain she learned to carry with discretion. And when she decided to speak, it wasn't to make an impact, it was to put the truth on the table. The most curious thing, this truth did not require shouting. It was said with emotional intelligence, calmly, with presence. And that was more disconcerting than any direct confrontation. Marta taught that female voice, when supported by experience and coherence, is capable of dismantling entire structures without the need for fiery speeches. It was enough to show what it always had: ability, empathy, vision, and above all, assailant force that many underestimate until it is too late. Today, Marta continues to walk the same corridors. But the way people look at her has changed. The company has changed. Not because she was forced to, but because she could no longer ignore her. She has proven that not everyone leadership needs a badge, that not all talent is in a spreadsheet, and that sometimes the greatest act of revolution is simply be you, with dignity, until the world learns to listen. And if until today no one has seen it, now there is no way to unsee it. How many people like Marta pass by you every day, and you simply don't see them? How many incredible stories are hidden behind a uniform, a silent routine, a badge that no one values? Perhaps without realizing it, you have also ignored someone who carried more wisdom than many leaders. Now tell me, are you really listening to those around you? Or do you still expect someone to prove your worth before you deserve respect? Marta didn't want the spotlight. She just wanted to exist with dignity. And perhaps what she teaches us most is that respect is not asked for. It is planted, and it is watered with presence, listening, and empathy. If this story touched you in any way, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and leave in the comments. Have you ever felt invisible like Marta? Or have you ever seen someone being ignored in the workplace? Share your story. Maybe it will inspire someone else too.